Have you ever wondered why two women can be the exact same age, in the exact same great health, and somehow one of them reads as 10 years younger than the other at a glance? Here's the honest answer. 9 times out of 10, it isn't skin, it isn't makeup, it's the haircut framing the whole conversation before anyone's even registered a single detail about her face. Today on Classic Fashion 60 Plus, I'm breaking down 5 haircuts that genuinely take years off your look after 60, and 3 extremely common ones that quietly do the opposite with the exact reasoning behind each one, so you can walk into your next salon appointment knowing precisely what to ask for. Think about the last time you left the salon feeling lighter, fresher, more like yourself the second you caught your reflection walking out the door. That specific feeling isn't an accident, and it isn't really about the color or the blowout either. It comes down to whether the shape of the cut is actually working with your face as it exists today or quietly working against it. Welcome to Classic Fashion 60 Plus, where every week we celebrate this decade of life with cuts, colors, and choices that work with you instead of against you. If you want hair that feels current, flattering, and genuinely easy to live with day to day, go ahead and subscribe, because this is a community built specifically for women who want to look every bit as vibrant as they already feel. Before we get into the specific cuts, let's talk honestly about why this matters more after 60 than it did at 40, because understanding the reasoning changes how you talk to your stylist. By this decade, your hair genuinely isn't the same hair you had 20 years ago. It may feel thinner, drier, a little more fragile than it used to, and that's not in your head. Your body naturally produces less keratin and collagen as you age, and your scalp produces less oil, which affects shine and manageability even in hair that was thick your whole life. Density and texture both shift gradually, and that's simply biology doing what biology does. But there's a second piece almost nobody explains clearly, and it's arguably more important than the biology itself. It's perception. How your hair frames your face has a measurable effect on how quickly other people read your age and your energy in the first few seconds of seeing you. A cut that lifts around the cheekbones and softly frames the face reads almost instantly and subconsciously as vitality and freshness. A heavy, dragging shape with no movement reads as tired, even on a woman who slept perfectly and feels wonderful that day. Your hair is genuinely the frame around your own portrait. Change the frame and the entire picture shifts without changing a single thing about your actual face underneath it. Choosing the right cut isn't vanity, it's simply self-respect, and it's worth treating it that way. It's also worth naming something else quietly happening across this whole category right now. Where hairstyling advice for this age group used to center almost entirely on disguising or minimizing, shorter, safer, less noticeable, the current direction genuinely runs the opposite way. Stylists working with women over 50 are increasingly building cuts around whatever texture, color, and length a woman actually already has, rather than pushing everyone toward the same handful of safe options. That shift matters because it means more real choice, not less, and every single cut on today's list reflects that. Let's get into the 5 that work in your favor. 1. The French chin bob. This is genuinely one of the defining cuts of the year, for good reason. It's elegant, minimal, and reads as effortlessly sophisticated rather than trying too hard. It sits precisely at the chin, often with soft, barely there bangs or a whisper of texture through the ends, and the clean shape does real, quiet work highlighting your jawline. Why does it take years off so effectively? First, the length itself, landing exactly at the chin, creates a natural frame around your best features, drawing the eye directly to your cheekbones and eyes rather than letting it drift downward. Second, the minimal styling required actually works in your favor. This cut looks intentional, whether it's blown out sleek or simply air-dried with a light texturizing cream, which means you're not chasing a complicated routine every single morning just to look put together. Third, it plays beautifully with natural gray or silver hair specifically. The clean shape gives silver strands a polished, almost Parisian quality, rather than letting them read as simply left alone. In real life, this cut is remarkably kind if you're growing out old color, because the sharp, clean line at the chin actually draws attention to the shape itself rather than to your roots. It's also genuinely low maintenance between salon visits. A quick trim every 6 to 8 weeks keeps that clean edge sharp without demanding constant upkeep. This cut particularly flatters oval and heart-shaped faces, and it's a lovely option if you want something that photographs beautifully without a lot of daily effort behind it. Styling tip: work a small amount of shine serum through damp ends before air drying, and if you want a slightly softer finish, a light wave with a curling wand at the very ends keeps the shape from feeling too severe. One more thing worth knowing about this cut specifically: it's remarkably kind if you wear statement earrings often, since the clean line at the jaw gives them a genuine frame to sit against, rather than competing with a lot of extra hair. And if you've been putting off a cut because you're worried about losing length dramatically, this is a wonderful middle ground. It feels like a real change without an extreme one, which makes it a lower stakes way to finally update a style you've had for years. 2. The modern textured pixie. A lot of women quietly ask themselves whether a pixie is simply too short for them at this stage of life. Cut correctly and specifically styled the way pixies are trending right now, it's honestly one of the most flattering options on this entire list. Here's why it works so well right now specifically. The current version of this cut leans heavily into texture rather than a severe uniform crop. Slightly tousled strands throughout create real movement and a genuinely youthful energy that a flat, closely shaved pixie simply doesn't have. It draws attention directly to your best features, your eyes, your cheekbones, your smile, essentially saying, "Look here," in the most flattering possible way. And it's remarkably practical. It works beautifully with glasses since there's no heavy hair competing with your frames. It dries in minutes and it holds its shape in humidity far better than longer hair that can fall flat by afternoon. The key distinction worth remembering: not all pixies read the same way. Ask your stylist specifically for feathered, textured edges rather than a blunt, severe crop, and request a little extra length left at the crown so you have something to work with when you're styling. A soft, side-swept fringe softens the forehead beautifully, and tapered sides genuinely elongate the neck in a way that makes you stand a little taller without consciously trying to. Styling is refreshingly simple. A small amount of texturizing cream worked through with your fingers while it's still slightly damp gives you shape and hold that lasts the whole day. For evening, a touch of shine serum smooths things into something a little more polished. This cut suits nearly every face shape when it's tailored correctly, and it's an especially wonderful option if you've worn long hair for decades and are finally ready for something that says plainly that you know exactly who you are. I want to address the adjustment period honestly too, because most style videos gloss right over it. The first week or two after going this short can feel like a genuine adjustment simply because you're not used to seeing yourself that way in the mirror yet. That's completely normal, and it passes faster than you'd expect. Nearly every woman who's made the switch describes the same experience: a slightly strange first few days, followed by a moment, usually around week 2 or 3, where it suddenly clicks and going back to long hair becomes unthinkable. 3. The lob. Stylists have genuinely been calling this the defining haircut of the year, and once you understand why, it makes complete sense. The lob sits in that specific sweet spot between short and long, landing somewhere between your chin and your collarbone, and it gives you real movement and personality without demanding hours of styling time. Here's exactly why it earns its reputation. It brings genuine lightness around the face regardless of your hair's natural texture, whether that's poker straight, wavy, or naturally curly. The length and light layering work with what you already have rather than fighting it. It plays beautifully with gray and silver hair specifically, since the movement catches light in a way that flat, unshaped length simply can't. And it has that effortless, just stepped out the door quality without ever tipping into looking undone or messy. What makes this one so practical day to day is its sheer versatility, where it's sleek and straight for a polished, structured look, or embrace a little natural wave for something softer and more relaxed. Either way, it holds its shape and keeps working for you. It's also genuinely one of the most forgiving lengths if you're not ready to commit to something dramatically shorter, but know your current length isn't doing you any favors anymore. This cut particularly flatters round and oval faces, softening angles while still giving real definition around the jaw. Styling tip: a lightweight mousse worked through damp roots keeps this length from going flat by midday. And if you have some natural wave, embrace it rather than fighting it with a flat iron. This cut was specifically designed to look intentional, even a little undone. This length is also worth considering if you're someone who's grown a little tired of the maintenance a very short cut demands, but isn't ready to commit to real length again either. It sits right in that comfortable middle ground, short enough to feel fresh and current, long enough that you still have real options for how you wear it day to day, whether that's tucked behind one ear, half pulled back, or worn completely loose. We're just past the halfway point of today's 5, and I want to know something specific from you. Between the French chin bob, the modern textured pixie, and the lob, which one has you already thinking about your next salon appointment? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and it tells me exactly what to cover in more depth in future videos. And if that explanation of how hair frames perception genuinely shifted how you're thinking about your own cut, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps this reach more women exactly at this stage of life. Let's get into the last 2 cuts because they might surprise you the most. 4. The textured shag with natural curl or wave. If you have natural curl or wave and have spent years fighting it into submission with a flat iron, this is genuinely your moment, because this specific cut is having a real resurgence right now, precisely because it works with texture instead of against it. Here's why it's so flattering after 60 specifically. The layering technique removes bulk exactly where hair tends to look heaviest, while adding volume exactly where it tends to fall flattest, and the combined effect is hair that looks light, full of life, and effortlessly current rather than dated. A one-length cut with no shape drags the whole face downward and can make finer, more fragile ends look stringy by comparison. Feathered layers throughout a shag do the opposite. Each layer creates lift, pulling everything visually upward instead of down, and that upward movement genuinely reads as more youthful and energized. Versatility is a real secret weapon here too. Wear it straight for a sleeker, more modern polish, or lean fully into soft waves or natural curl for something relaxed and full of personality. This cut was specifically designed as a forgiving wash and go option, rather than something requiring daily styling discipline. The sweet spot for length tends to land around the collarbone or just a few inches below it. Go much longer and you lose that lift. Go much shorter and you lose the movement that makes the whole style work. Soft curtain bangs or wispy side pieces complete this cut beautifully, softening the forehead and blending seamlessly into the layering rather than sitting as a separate, heavier element. What genuinely makes this cut beloved in real daily life is how well it handles a second or even third day without washing. It still looks intentionally styled rather than simply unwashed, which is a real gift on busy mornings. It's also worth mentioning how well this cut travels, quite literally. If you've ever struggled with a more structured style falling apart after a day of humidity, wind, or a long flight, the shag genuinely benefits from a little imperfection. A slightly windswept version often looks even better than a freshly styled one, which makes it one of the most forgiving options on this entire list for anyone with an active lifestyle or a lot of travel on the calendar. 5. Long layers with soft waves and curtain bangs. And finally, for anyone who has zero interest in cutting real length off regardless of what any trend says, this combination is genuinely having a moment right now, and it proves conclusively that long hair after 60 isn't something to apologize for or quietly phase out. Here's why this particular combination is being celebrated rather than discouraged this year specifically. Soft, loose waves through longer, layered hair create real dimension and movement instead of one heavy, flat curtain pulling everything downward. Layering specifically prevents long hair from ever looking weighed down, and it adds a graceful, natural bounce that reads as vitality rather than simply hair that hasn't been cut in a while. Curtain bangs do genuinely remarkable work framing the face, softening the forehead, and drawing attention up toward your eyes, all while growing out gracefully over time without demanding constant trims to stay looking intentional. This particular combination is especially stunning against natural silver or gray hair, which is increasingly being celebrated at real length rather than assumed to require shortening. The movement and soft waves catch light beautifully against silver specifically, giving it a polished, almost editorial quality rather than reading as simply unstyled length. This look suits nearly every face shape when the layering is tailored correctly, and it's an especially wonderful option if you love your length, love the femininity of it, and simply want a bit more shape and softness framing your face day to day rather than a dramatic change. Styling tip: a lightweight root-lifting mousse keeps volume at the crown through the day, and a large barrel curling wand used loosely, not tightly wound, gives you that soft, natural-looking wave rather than a stiff curl that reads as overly done. Now that we've covered the 5 that genuinely work in your favor, let's talk honestly about the other side of this, because sometimes it isn't what you're missing, it's what you're still quietly holding on to that's adding years without you fully realizing it. These next 3 are extremely common after 60, and I completely understand why so many women gravitate toward them. They feel practical and familiar, but they can unintentionally work against you in ways that are worth knowing about. The first one to reconsider: the overly severe blunt crop. I understand exactly why this one feels like the sensible, practical choice. Wash it, walk out the door, done. The issue shows up specifically when it's cut extremely close with completely blunt edges and zero feathering anywhere. At that point, it stops functioning as a frame for your face entirely. There's no softness left to lift or balance anything, which means every fine line and every bit of natural softening around the jaw is suddenly sitting in full, unfiltered light with nothing to gently soften it. There's also a texture problem worth understanding. As hair naturally gets finer with age, a very close, flat crop lying tight against the scalp can actually draw attention to thinning rather than disguising it, which is the opposite of what most women are hoping for when they choose this cut. It can also read as a touch severe or overly formal rather than warm and approachable. And it doesn't give bold lipstick or statement earrings any kind of soft backdrop to work against. They end up competing with the cut instead of being complemented by it. The fix isn't abandoning short hair entirely, it's choosing texture over severity. Ask specifically for feathered edges rather than blunt ones. Request a little extra length left at the crown for styling flexibility, and add a soft side-swept fringe to soften your forehead line. You keep every bit of the easy, low-maintenance routine you love, you simply project vitality instead of severity. The second one to reconsider: long, heavy, one-length hair. This one tends to be genuinely emotional for a lot of women, and I understand exactly why. Long hair has often been part of your identity for decades, and the thought of changing it can feel like more than just a haircut. The real issue was never the length itself, it's keeping that length entirely uniform, with no layering, no shape, and essentially no built-in movement anywhere. That solid, uniform weight pulls the whole face visually downward. If your jawline has softened even slightly, which happens to nearly all of us eventually, that heavy, straight line tends to make it more noticeable rather than less. It also highlights something that happens naturally with age. Your ends naturally get finer and more fragile over time, and when every strand is exactly the same length, those fragile ends can look stringy and tired rather than elegant, no matter how healthy the hair actually is. You genuinely don't have to cut it all off to fix this. You simply need shape. Keep your length, but add soft feathered layers, whether that's through the long layered shag we covered a moment ago, or a simpler long layered cut landing around the collarbone. Those layers remove the heaviness and create lift that pulls the eye upward instead of down, so even finer hair reads as thicker and more dynamic. Curtain bangs or soft, wispy pieces around the face complete the update beautifully without requiring you to sacrifice a single inch of the length you love. The third one to reconsider, the rigid, perfectly set helmet shape. You know this one the moment you see it. Perfectly set every morning, heavily sprayed into place, a stiff, rounded shape that doesn't move an inch even when you turn your head. It feels neat, tidy, and completely reliable, which is exactly why so many women love it. But that perfect, total stillness is precisely what quietly ages it. Hair with genuinely zero movement reads almost instantly as being stuck in place, and it can make you seem less approachable than you actually are, simply because movement and natural texture are what communicate energy and lightness after 60. It can also create a boxier overall silhouette that hardens your features rather than softening them, and it tends to show harsh, visible regrowth lines much faster if you color your hair, since there are no layers anywhere to blend that line softly. The fix keeps every bit of the polish you genuinely love while finally letting it breathe a little. Ask your stylist for a layered bob with real texture and movement built in. Skip the perfectly rigid curve entirely and consider a soft side part or a slightly tousled finish to break up that solid helmet-like effect. Hair that gently sways when you turn your head and that looks genuinely soft to the touch reads as vitality and warmth, which is exactly the impression most of us are actually going for. So there you have it, 5 haircuts genuinely worth bringing to your next appointment, and 3 extremely common ones worth reconsidering, along with the real reasoning behind each one. A quick guide as you're deciding what's right for you specifically. If you have a rounder face, height and lift at the crown genuinely elongates it. If you have a stronger square jawline, soft layers and a side-swept fringe bring real balance. If your face runs longer, width and movement through the sides create harmony rather than adding further length. If your hair is fine or thinning, shorter, well-layered cuts create the illusion of fullness. If it's naturally thick, smart layering removes unnecessary weight without sacrificing body. And if you have natural waves or curls, please don't fight them. Layers that work with that texture rather than against it will always look more current than a straightened style working against your hair's actual nature. Bring a few reference photos to your next appointment. It genuinely makes it easier for your stylist to understand your specific vision. And keep your regular trims on schedule so any layering stays sharp and defined rather than growing out into something shapeless. One last thought on choosing between all of this. Don't feel pressure to pick the boldest option on this list just because it's trending. The right cut is genuinely the one that fits how you actually live, how much time you honestly want to spend styling each morning, and how you want to feel when you catch your reflection unexpectedly, not just how a photo of it looks on someone else's face. All 5 of today's cuts work because they're built around movement and genuine texture rather than a single rigid formula, which means there's real room to adjust any of them slightly to fit your specific hair and your specific life. Your haircut was never really hiding your age. It's about genuinely highlighting what you already love about yourself. If this helped you see your next cut a little more clearly, tell me in the comments which of the 5 you're most excited to try, and honestly, which of the 3 you're finally ready to let go of. If you want more genuinely flattering style and hair guidance made specifically for women who want to feel radiant after 60, subscribe to Classic Fashion 60+, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, aging was never about fading quietly into the background. It's about evolving with a little more grace and honestly a little more boldness with every single year.